Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. Okay, so we're getting into House of X Part 4, and here is the deal. If this is the 4th issue, I don't even want to see what the finale is like. Like, I don't even want to know, like, dude, the finale is going to be insane because this is, Jonathan Hickman, this is amazing. Okay. So, man, let me tell you something. All right, here's the thing. So this initially picks up with the other side of the mission to the mother mold, right? We talked about the mother mold being the sentinel that would create other master molds, right? It was a way to just exponentially create a huge amount of sentinels in an exceedingly short amount of time. What this does is where you have the X-Men launching the mission near the sun at the old Dyson Sphere as it was created by Tony Stark during Hickman's run on Avengers and New Avengers. What you have here is you have Storm and you've got Magic and you've got Xavier and you've got Magneto who are communicating with them from Earth, from the other side. And that's the big question that's asked here, because one of the cool things that goes on is you actually see a kind of melding of minds coming together. Now, this is not uncommon. What's going on here is they're basically daisy chaining everybody together, right? So you've got Magneto, you've got Beast, you've got Storm, you've got Magic, you've got all these different characters gathered together, and all their minds are going to link telepathically and they're going to communicate with Jean Grey. And the reason why is because this is an astronomical distance for the most part. I mean, given the entire scope of the universe, it's a step out the front door, but in terms of the distance between the Earth and the sun, it's a huge amount of distance, especially for characters trying to communicate telepathically. Remember, when you're talking about someone like Charles Xavier, somebody like Emma Frost, and Jean Grey without the Phoenix Force, they're basically Earth-based telepaths, right? They can't really communicate to people on other planets. That's really reserved more for somebody who's in possession of like the Mind Stone from the Infinity Gauntlet or something like that. And so it really does take all this mental energy to be able to pull all this off and to be able to communicate with Jean. And what we end up finding out is that when the bomb was detonated by Gregor, the head of security at the time, that basically it's caused absolute havoc for the X-Men, right? Like they ended up losing Archangel and Husk, right? So both those characters are dead. Like it's crazy to see Archangel just die like that, but it gets crazy. Like here's the funny thing about Wolverine. When I first looked at this, I was like, did Jonathan Hickman really show Wolverine's arm being cut off? Because he has adamantium. If you look close enough, there's a bone. So like his arm's not actually cut off. It's just mangled really bad. But basically, like the X-Men team, this field team has pretty much been decimated. And that's kind of a crazy thing because Hickman is sort of looking at this and saying, okay, how can we make situation dire for this, right? Because if you go and you look at almost anybody's X-Men run outside of Chris Claremont would have done this. This is exactly what Chris Claremont would have done. He would have had the X-Men go on this ship. He would have had the people on the ship respawn in kind, and then he would have shown the X-Men decimated, right? Like just their ranks, not really all of them being massacred, but certainly all of them being like severely injured or something like that. You don't really see that in modern day. Like it's kind of crazy. You look at certain things and you see it from time to time, but you don't really see a scenario where it's like, okay, so this is basically the last stand of the X-Men. You never really see that. And so it's kind of cool to see Hickman doing this, showing us how dire things really are for the team. But at the end of the day, the mission has to go on. And so when the question is asked of Jean Grey, or I guess asked of all the other X-Men through Jean Grey, who's being communicated to by, Professor Xavier using the minds of the other X-Men on Earth, can the mission go on? The response to Cyclops is yes. Now, this is where Jonathan Hickman shines when it comes to writing Cyclops. And this is where Cyclops fans get their due. Let's talk about this for a second. Let's talk about Cyclops. Cyclops fans have really just kind of been screwed for like the last few years or so. And I understand where they're coming from because while I'm not the most hardcore fan of Cyclops, I am a fan of the X-Men. My favorite X-Men, well, I'm not going to tell you who my favorite X-Man is. I want you guys to guess who my favorite X-Man is. I'm curious to see if any of you guys can get it right. Because it'll probably end up being like a crazy guess. If anybody gets it right, I'll be amazed. But nonetheless, like Cyclops fans have been left hanging over the years, right? Because like Cyclops was killed and like they got the crappy young Cyclops from the Bendis run and nobody wanted him. That character sucked. People wanted like the old school Boy Scout Cyclops, and it was cool to see his character's evolvement, right? Where he went from being like the guy who always believed in Xavier's dream to the guy who basically became the new Magneto. Like I love that version of his character, but Cyclops fans have kind of been screwed. And this is a great moment because this is a tribute to the Cyclops fans, because during the old school Chris Claremont era, and even during like the Stan Lee Jack Kirby era, the Roy Thomas era, the Arnold Drake era, Grant Morrison, you go to Chuck Austin, you go through like all these different eras of the X-Men, and this is classic Cyclops. And it's the one that people have really wanted to see come back for quite some time, because he is the guy who would say, we're all probably gonna die here, but so long as the mission succeeds, that's all that matters. Because because more important than any one man is the mission and the future of mutant kind. That's what I love about the character of Cyclops. And so ultimately he basically says, we're gonna split up. We're gonna go to different locations, right? We're all gonna go to different sections, and we're basically gonna destroy these giant devices that are holding the mother mold in place, right? Because the idea is to release those devices and the mother mold will just go crashing down into the sun, and that'll basically be the end of it. And it's pretty cool the way it happens, right? Because then you've got the wife of Gregor, who we talked about in the last video. You got her who's basically freaking out because her husband sacrificed his life. And so when this happens, she's basically told, look, I can't really order you to do anything. I can't really tell you what you can and can't do. But what I can say is if you do nothing, then your husband sacrificed his life for nothing. So do something, because it's the only way to really redeem your husband's sacrifice here. And so that's when this battle is fought on two fronts, because on the surface, we would say, okay, it'd be a silly move for her to go after the X-Men ship that's basically attached to the mother mold, mother mold satellite. It would make a whole lot of sense because none of the X-Men are really there. But what it does do is it gives them a place to basically retreat to, and possibly an out or a place to make their last stand. Her response is get rid of it, scuttle the ship. So they're stuck here. There's no way for them to get back, right? And it's kind of cool because remember, Nightcrawler can't teleport that far. Nightcrawler can't teleport from like the Earth to the moon or something like that. His powers aren't that developed. But within the time frame that it takes for Gregors Wife, this scientist, to basically commune and figure out what it is they want to do, 2 of these brackets are deactivated. They've got 2 more left. And it's kind of crazy, and it gets super cool because what it does is it switches back over to the ship itself, and then it picks up with Monet St Croix. Now, of course, we've explained Monet St Croix in the Generation X video, so I'll link that down in the description, but she's basically 2 people in one. That's really what it is with her. But she also does have like that crazy penance look, right? When I think is when she becomes penance. Her history is so crazy and so murky. The reason why they did what they did with her was because they were trying to find a way to make Generation X relevant going into like everything after issue number 21. And so like it didn't work. She was cool for the time, but like nobody cared about Monet St Croix. The long and short of it is she's exceedingly capable, right? So I mean, she literally puts Jean Grey in the escape pod and then scuttles the escape pod, sends it flying out into space, and basically says like she's going to take everybody else on her own. And of course, she's completely destroyed. This switches over to Mystique, and this blew me away, right? Because Mystique goes into that one section. They chose Mystique for that area because she can shapeshift, right? So she can just look like one of the scientists. The issue is, as soon as she gets in, she's met by the doctor's wife, and what this chick does is open up one of the airlocks and suck Mystique out into space, right? So Mystique is gone, like she's dead. And it's just like dude, they're falling, dude, they're dropping like flies, man. Like the X-Men are just dropping like flies, and it's the craziest thing, right? Because like from there, like it's basically Hickman telling us like it's the last stand, right? Because what the scientist ends up doing is she brings Mother Mold online. Now, this is a dangerous game because remember, with these Sentinels, they are technically designed to be characters that have an artificial intelligence, right? Now, their artificial intelligence can't really deviate past its own programming, which really kind of seems to be it doesn't really seem to make any sense, right? It kind of seems to just be in direct contradiction with itself, but it's basically this idea that it can think and function within the realm of its programming. The issue with this is they don't know how its programming is going to like evolve and grow, right? I mean, like you're talking about a computer system. So all this thing needs to do is come online and in the span of seconds, lose its mind, destroy the entire ship, and then who knows what would happen after that. That's the fear they have. They don't know if it's going to be sane or if it's going to be insane. If it's going to be like, I am Mother Mold, I make master molds, and that's it. Or if it's going to be like, I am Mother Mold, everyone's gonna die. Like we don't know if that's what's gonna happen. We don't know if that's going to be the case or not. And it's a gamble. But the crazy thing about this is that with Mother Mold coming on in 10 seconds, the X-Men have to disengage this last device, right? But the issue is that the open airlock is on the other side, which means they have to find a way to get out there, deactivate it, to shut it down, and then leave. And it all comes down to Wolverine. It's the last stand of Wolverine. And this is the coolest thing ever, because if there's anything that Jonathan Hickman is good at, it's sending characters out on one hell of a bang. He is amazing at doing that, right? Like he did it during the Fantastic Four. He did it during Avengers and New Avengers. Like he did it during all these characters. Like do you guys remember from New Avengers when Hyperion and Thor died? Oh, dude, it was the craziest thing ever. It was like, dude, like Hyperion was like, we're gonna die here today, and Thor's like, yes, but if we're gonna die a warrior's death, and it's like it's the craziest thing. Hyperion's like, he's like, I will see you in Valhalla, and Thor's like, brother, today I will race you there. And they just go like racing up against these Beyonders. They get totally obliterated. It's like there was a crack of thunder and something else, and then silence, and it's just like, holy Nikes, man. It was insane. Like it was one of the coolest things. Hickman is so good about that, right? Because you end up having this conversation between Wolverine and Nightcrawler, and Wolverine's just kind of like, do you think there's anything for me after this? Like, do you think there's anything in the afterlife waiting for me? It's a vulnerable Wolverine, right? Because the way that Hickman writes it is kind of Wolverine covering it up with, I'm just sort of curious, but he's not. He's kind of like, I'm gonna die here. Like I'm gonna die in this place. There's no real way for me to come back. I'm gonna be stuck out in space. I'm gonna be incinerated by the sun. There's not gonna be any way for me to return from this. So like, do you think there's there's an afterlife for me. And it's it's one of the coolest, most touching moments, because Nightcrawler tells him, when you wake from this earthly slumber, my friend, I will be there waiting for you, radiant and with open arms. And it's just like from that point, he teleports Wolverine out there, right? Because like Nightcrawler burns up in the sun, he's got to go there to get Wolverine to that location. So Nightcrawler burns up in the sun's heat. Wolverine's skin is literally melting off of his adamantium skeleton, which is going to be the only thing left. And he's just like hacking and slashing away at this thing, manages to destroy it, and falls into the sun with the Mother Mold. And it's one of the coolest things. As that's happening, he's still like slashing away at Mother Mold's face as he crashes down into the sun. It's the most badass thing I've ever seen in my life. Man, let me tell you something. Man, let me tell you something. Man, this is Jonathan Hickman writing. It's the craziest thing, because from that point, then it picks up on Cyclops trying to make his escape. Cyclops is shot in the back. The nanites end up traveling through his body and into his brain. And it's the craziest thing, because when he's basically saying, when he's talking to the scientist and he's like, capturing me doesn't mean anything, her response is, we're not capturing anybody today. You guys killed my husband. You're gonna die. And Cyclops gets shot in the face and dies. All the X-Men sent on this mission die. Every single one of them die. It's the craziest thing ever, because now what we get, and this is going to be a sight to behold. Now what we get is the wrath of Charles Xavier and the wrath of Magneto. And I am hyped to see what that looks like. With that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.